We are live in a wet and soggy Chicago on kind of the extended eve of Christmas, or the Mass of Christ, which is an interesting concept. The Mass of Light, I think, is probably another good parallel description of this era of the year.
Nice. So I can see that light shining through. So yeah, it's in us all, and it's all about helping us to come to know that even more and more deeply.
Exactly. And this is a time also of other, icons of the season. And one of the ones I find more interesting than many is the idea of Santa Claus, St. Nicholas. And a lot of people, they associate him with the guys that you meet in the shopping malls and things like that. But in reality, he's kind of a short guy. He's not that big a person. And reindeer they're not really that big when you actually encounter them. They're kind of small but powerful little creatures. But I have always wondered if during that night of activity, Santa gives himself time to take a pit stop or two in his journeys around the world.
I should hope so. That's a lot of flying. I'd be worn out.
Yeah, I would too. Although I think that he hits Starbucks randomly, so along the way he gets juiced up on espresso, and that makes the journey a lot easier. And I have heard that reindeer often have a little issue with flatulence, and so maybe that's what propels them up into the sky.
Well, that sounds like kind of a miserable ride for Mr. Saint Nick there.
Well, I don't know if you're, kind of juiced out of your mind on coffee. You probably really don't even notice it because you're 3 steps ahead of yourself anyway.
Well, hopefully.
But it is a season for laughter and mirth, and of course that's something I'm really very committed to in this human experience. I think we spend it being way too serious, and the reality is if we could just laugh a little bit more, perhaps all of us would be much happier and live a much more free style of life, and not be under pressure like in the day-to-day rat race out there on planet Earth. And that kind of leads us into this topic for today, which is section 16 in the teacher's manual. How should the teacher of God spend his day? And for me, I think spending it with laughter and humor is a big part of fulfilling our obligations here as teachers of God.
Yeah, it's so true. The ego is all about seriousness. So as soon as we slip into feeling serious or thinking something's a really big deal, we know that the ego is kind of hooked into us. So it just becomes another opportunity for us to say, okay, well, how can I maybe lighten up the mood a little bit? How can I find the easy and the free way of being in this moment, and then in each moment as we keep going through life? So yeah, laughter and jokes, maybe just watching a comedy or going to see a comedian. I think these things are all really helpful for us. They help lighten us up a bit, which, as we're saying, this is the holiday of lightness. So let's do what we can to kind of find that in us. And I think this section is really interesting because Jesus does go into a little bit of detail about, kind of what you could or couldn't do. He says pretty near the beginning that the advanced teacher of God doesn't need any structure, that he should really just be listening within, basically, and letting each moment unfold. But he says most of us are really not at that point. That we're not so plugged into our inner truth that we're always there without fail. So he does give kind of some gentle suggestions. And basically what he says is, This course is always practical. Maybe that the teacher of God is not in a situation that fosters quiet thought as he awakes. So I guess right before that, he suggested that we spend a little bit of time in devotion to God. But then he says, if you don't have time, he says, let him but remember that he chooses to spend time with God as soon as possible, and let him do so. Duration is not the major concern. One can easily sit still an hour with closed eyes and accomplish nothing. One can as easily give God only an instant, and in that instant join with him completely. So he's really saying here it's quality, not quantity, that we should make some time to make sure we're having a little inner reflection and communion with God. But we don't need to make it a marathon. It's really all about their intention that we set, and really setting aside that time so that we can connect to that Christ within.
Exactly, and of course he does go on to put a significant emphasis, at least in my mind, on doing that as soon as you get up in the day, as soon as you awaken. That is the ideal time to devote a few seconds, a few minutes, a half hour, whatever is comfortable, to establishing your intention for the day, which is to do only God's will. And of course, that sets you on that merry race of multiple occasions to forgive yourself for falling off the bandwagon as the day unfolds. So, one of the great movies this time of year is A Christmas Carol or Scrooge, and I personally like the Bill Murray version of Scrooge. And at the end of that movie, the place where he discovers, I think, the greatest depth of joy is when he picks up his secretary's son, who hasn't spoken in 5 or 6 years. And the little guy finally opens his mouth and says something. And I think that, if we can make a connection with children at some point during the day, I think that restores a lot of our truth to us. So even if it's going on YouTube and watching a video of kids play, it reinforces that idea of we are innocent and we should be engaged in a playful approach to life with as much joy and as much inspiration as we can muster to share with those around us.
Yeah, I think it's no coincidence that, Santa Claus himself is described as, being very jolly and, always smiling and laughing. And I think it's kind of too bad that Jesus doesn't have that same rap in our general understanding of him. We usually get Jesus kind of a grim, suffering kind of dude. And I think that he was just as happy as Santa, if not more so. So I think if we can change this image that we have of Jesus to being this mirthful, joyful, light being, I think that is much more what he really was like. And I think it gives us a good reminder that when we're getting a little heavy or a little down in the dumps, that, hey, if Jesus can be happy even going through some tough stuff, that we can be happy too. So, I think in a comical version of this was kind of immortalized in Monty Python's Life of Brian, where at the end of the movie, they're all hanging on the crosses and singing a very happy song. But I think that there's a nugget of truth in that even in the face of such extreme hardness, obviously being killed at the end of his life, he knew that there was no death. He knew that life was all that was real. And I think that the creators of the movie were kind of mocking that perspective, but maybe unbeknownst to them, there was a nugget of real truth in that.
Yeah, that is one of the interesting things, that a lot of times when people are under the presumption that they know everything and they're harpooning things with their guffaws. In actuality, they're revealing an even greater depth of truth in whatever it is that they're attacking. So I think that, you know, that especially shows up in spirituality over and over and over again. As we're continuing with progressing down in the text here, in the lesson that we're examining today, the next paragraph has some beautiful, beautiful thoughts in it. It says, there is one thought in particular that should be remembered throughout the day. It is a thought of pure joy, a thought of peace, a thought of limitless release. Limitless because all things are freed within it. You think you made a place of safety for yourself. You think you made a power that can save you from all the fearful things you see in dreams. It is not so. So all of our little machinations to give ourselves a sense of security are really pretty much meaningless, because that sense of security can be devastated, you know, in just the tiniest of incidents in our lives. And it goes on to say, your safety lies not there. What you give up is merely the illusion of protecting illusions. And it is this you fear, and only this. So now we're looped back into that idea that this mortal life is comprised of one ongoing series of illusions that we buy into, that we try to make real for ourselves. And the truth is, the more real we make it for ourselves, the worse the situation becomes. So we need to be willing to let go of that and step out of our limitation and just, you know, contemplate, hey, my thought about myself is that I am ending here at my fingertips or at the top of my head or at the bottom of my feet. But in reality, you are a being that is inconceivable in this world because you are completely and absolutely limitless, even as God is limitless. So how thrilling a vision of self is that to embrace as a Christmas present in this season of rebirth.
Yeah, amen. That's such a beautiful paragraph. I think that whenever we're suffering in any way, we can be sure that in some way we're making what's happening real. And we're making the situation that seems to be presenting us real. We're really buying into it. We're believing that we are really this body that is involved in some way in what's happening, even if it's just watching something on the news. So we're reinforcing that bodily identification. But what we can do instead is say, you know, there's a beautiful quote, one of my favorite prayers. It's on page 660 in the text. And what it says is, there's no statement that the world is more afraid to hear than this. I do not know the thing I am, and therefore do not know what I am doing, where I am, or how to look upon the world or on myself. And he goes on to say, yet in this learning is salvation born, and what you are will tell you of itself. So as we really relinquish our ideas about what we are, we're actually given the truth of what we are. So as you were just saying, it's not a conceptual thing. It's not something that we can, quote unquote, understand, but it is something that we can come to experience. And that's the greatest gift of all. That is the Christ being reborn. That is the light coming to replace the seeming darkness. So I think that we're right on track here and chipping away at that ego so that we can have that experience ourselves, and we can bring that light and be a beacon into the world that's still looking for the truth.
Yes, that is the desired goal, the desired outcome of all of this. And, you know, again, this time of year, this season is perfect for multiple lessons around these ideas, because when you're out there driving around in the shopping centers and the main streets of suburbia, there are so many occasions to just lose it. You get cut off in traffic, somebody does something stupid, and you get wound up in these vicious attacks and shaking your fist at your fellow driver. And, then you have to really step back and pull yourself back and ask yourself in the most serious and visceral way, do I really want this? Is this something that brings me any reward at all? It costs me my joy. It costs me my sense of peace. And it turns into an attack on my fellow man, who is in fact me, because we can't step out of that reality that all of us are of the one life. So anytime you attack somebody, you attack yourself. So Christmas, even though a lot of people are kind of the thought of bah humbug on the larger scale, it is a source of constantly causing us to come back and check ourselves and rein ourselves in and get ourselves back onto that level of truth where we can forgive all things that we believe that we're seeing and dismiss all of this as just being an absurd and silly nightmare that we're having, like the nightmare before Christmas, and step away from it all.
Yeah, I like that idea of kind of correcting our course, as though we were on a path that was kind of like this straight line, and we veered a little bit, and then we just kind of veer back onto it. And I think of that sometimes around this idea of, we're always kind of slipping and falling off the path, but it's not as big of a deal as we can make it out to be sometimes. I know I've had this experience, I'm sure a lot of people have, where you notice that you're being fearful or judgmental, and then not only are you dealing with that, but then you judge yourself. So it's like you pile on an extra layer, and it's not really helpful. So what we can start to do is we start to notice when we go into that place and say, it doesn't really accomplish anything. I'm going to just be gentle with myself and just get back on track. And it can be very, very simple. So I've heard the analogy being that like an autopilot on an airplane is always going off course, but the computer is almost always correcting it. So it seems like it's just following this very easy path, but it's always having these subtle and slight corrections. And our spiritual path can be like that too, where every time we notice that we're not totally peaceful, we have another chance to say, okay, what's coming up here? How can I move through this and rediscover that light of joy that's always within me? It's always shining. Maybe I just took my eye off of it for a little bit there.
Absolutely, yes. Constantly reinforcing that idea that this too shall pass. It's all like dandelion fluffies in a spring windstorm. They just float all over, but they're ephemeral. They vanish. And that's really what this world is. It's vanishing right in front of us, but we can do a lot of amazing things here. We can share a lot of amazing things, and we can bring a lot of joy into a place of darkness and be supportive of the restoration of light, especially at this season of the year when we're looking at the solstice and these December holidays, when everybody is coming together and hopefully getting past all of the old pains and sorrows.
It truly is a blessed time, and if that's our intention, then we can't help but receive blessings, because giving and receiving are one in truth. So every time we think a kind thought about someone, we share an expression of happiness and peace with another person, we're really receiving those gifts for ourselves. Most of us have had the experience of really maybe hugging someone or in some way expressing our compassion with another person. And how do we feel in that moment? Well, we feel pretty good usually too. So it makes sense that yeah, as you give, so you receive. And as you see your brother, so you see yourself. So I think as we're just about stepping into Christmas here, for anyone who might be traveling or visiting family, this is a great opportunity, especially with maybe those people who get under your skin a little bit. Like, can you look at them through a little different perspective? Can you see the Christ within them, even while they may be their same irritating self? And by really seeing the truth beyond the form, and by really listening to the deeper call for happiness that might be different than the words coming out of anyone's mouth, you can really start to have that experience within yourself, and you can start to embody that light that Jesus, same as Jesus did when he walked here on the earth. And we can bring that happiness really to everyone we meet. And by doing so, we guarantee it for ourselves.
That is absolutely a fact. Well, Barrett, I understand that you're going to be doing some traveling and hanging out with some people who will probably irritate the daylights out of you on occasion, and that's a good thing, because you're healing yourself and you're healing them. All of us here are being healed, and that's probably the greatest Christmas gift of all.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well,
and we do have an event that is going to be coming up in mid-January. We want to reinforce the idea that you need to join us, because it's going to be a very celebrative and lighthearted experience.
Yeah, if you've enjoyed it, laughing with us on our time today, then we'll have even more laughs in person, and probably a hug or two too. So speaking of hugs, if you're needing one or two, I'm sure we'll bring a couple extra with us.
Exactly. Well, my friend, safe travels. Get out there and don't try to run any reindeer off the road, because
I will be watching out for their flatulence, however. So now that I've been forewarned, but
yes, you can light reindeer farts, and it propels them right up into the sky.
Well, you have a great Christmas too, Chris. This has been a beautiful year of sharing these messages. I'm really honored to be sharing this time with you, and very grateful just to have this forum and opportunity to connect with all these other people too that are hearing our messages. So yeah, I'm really happy.
Absolutely. It has been a blessing having these discussions with you, and as we're looking forward to 2016, the sky's the limit. I think that the joy is just going to continue to spiral upwards and outwards all across the universe.
That's right. As the famous movie character said, to infinity and beyond.
Exactly. Well, mi amigo, you have a safe journey, and I'll see you in 1 week.
All right. Sounds good.
Take care.